If you're about to buy a house in 2026, or if you already own one, there is a single decision buried in the blueprint that could be quietly costing you thousands of dollars every single year. It's not the granite countertops. It's not the size of the garage. It's not even the school district. It's something almost nobody thinks about when they walk through an open house, and by the time most homeowners figure it out, they've already signed the papers. I'm talking about which direction your house faces. And today, I'm going to show you exactly why millions of Americans who bought east-facing or west-facing homes are now stuck paying painfully high-energy bills, sitting in rooms that feel like ovens in the summer and ice boxes in the winter, and in some cases, actively trying to sell a home they regret buying. Stick with me until the end, because I'm also going to show you what to do if you already own one of these homes, because there are real fixes, and some of them cost less than a dinner out. Let's start with the basic physics that almost no real estate agent will ever explain to you, because frankly, most of them don't know it either. The sun doesn't sit still in the sky. In the winter, it travels low across the southern horizon. In the summer, it climbs high overhead. This single fact, the changing angle of the sun through the seasons, is the entire foundation of what engineers and architects call passive solar design. And it is the reason why the direction your house faces can make or break your energy bill for as long as you live there. Here's how it plays out in real life. A home with large windows facing south is actually in a great position as long as it's designed correctly. In the winter, when the sun is low, sunlight pours through those south-facing windows and heats up the floors, the walls, the furniture, all of it acting like a free heater running all day long. But in the summer, when the sun is high overhead, a properly sized roof overhang or awning blocks that same window from direct sunlight, keeping the house cool without the air conditioner working overtime. It sounds almost too simple, but this is genuinely how the U.S. Department of Energy recommends homes be designed, and it's been proven for decades in energy-efficient construction. Now here's where it goes wrong for millions of homeowners. East-facing and west-facing windows do not follow this same friendly pattern. An east-facing window gets hit with direct, low-angle morning sun. A west-facing window gets hit with direct, low-angle afternoon sun. And because the sun is low in the sky during these hours, no roof overhang in the world can block it. You can have the biggest, most expensive overhang on the market, and that low afternoon sun is still going to blast directly through a west-facing window and heat up your living room like a greenhouse. This is exactly why so many homeowners with big west-facing windows describe the same experience. Their living room becomes unbearable every single afternoon, especially in the summer, and their air conditioning unit runs almost non-stop trying to keep up. If you've ever walked into a friend's house in the late afternoon and felt like you stepped into a sauna, even though the air conditioning was clearly running, there's a good chance that house has major west-facing glass with little to no protection from that afternoon sun. And if you've ever wondered why your own electric bill spikes every June, July, and August, no matter how many times you replace the air filter, this could be exactly why. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's real money leaving your pocket every single month. Homes with poor orientation and unprotected east or west windows can see dramatically higher cooling costs compared to a similar home that's been oriented and shaded correctly. Multiply that difference by 12 months a year, then multiply it by however many years you plan to live in that house, and you start to understand why so many Americans are calling this one of their biggest regrets as homeowners. It's not a one-time cost, it's a tax you pay every single year, quietly, for as long as you own that home. And it's not just about comfort and cooling bills. Poor orientation also drags down your heating efficiency in the winter. Homes need to be designed so their longer side runs east to west, with the shorter ends facing north and south. Why does this matter? Because it minimizes the amount of wall and window surface exposed to those harsh east and west sun angles, while maximizing the surface facing south, where you actually want that free winter heat coming in. A lot of production homes built quickly by big developers over the last 20 years completely ignore this principle. They orient houses based on how many lots they can cram into a subdivision, not based on the sun. Which means an enormous number of American homes, especially ones built in fast-growing suburbs since the 2000s, are essentially working against the sun instead of with it. Let's talk about the north-facing side of the house for a second too, because this is where things get climate-specific, and I want to be honest with you instead of giving you some blanket rule that only works in half the country. In colder states, homes in the northern half of the country, a north-facing wall with lots of glass is a real energy drain in the winter. North-facing windows get almost no direct sunlight during the cold months, so instead of gaining free heat, you're just losing warm indoor air through that glass all winter long, and your heating system has to work harder to compensate. That's why energy-efficient homes in cold climates are typically designed with smaller windows on the north side and larger, well-shaded windows on the south side. But if you live somewhere hot, like Texas, Arizona, or Florida, the calculation shifts a little. In those states, the bigger enemy isn't heat loss in winter, it's heat gain in summer. And that means east and west windows are still public enemy number one. But south-facing glass needs to be handled carefully too, with the right amount of glass and the right overhang, because you're not trying to capture heat in the winter as much as you're trying to survive the summer. This is actually backed by state energy programs. Florida's own state energy guidance recommends putting most of a home's window area on the south side and minimizing east and west windows specifically to avoid overheating while still getting decent natural light and moderate winter warmth. So no matter where you live in this country, the enemy is remarkably consistent. Unprotected east and west-facing glass. Now let's get into why this actually matters for you if you're house hunting in 2026, because this is where the story turns from interesting fact into critical decision that affects your wallet for the next 15 to 30 years. When you're walking through a home for sale, nobody hands you a compass. The listing agent isn't going to casually mention, "Oh, by the way, this primary bedroom faces due west, so expect a rough time around 4 p.m. every single day from May through September." That information simply isn't part of the sales pitch. It's up to you to figure it out, and most buyers never do, until they've lived there through one brutal summer. Here's a simple way to check it yourself before you buy. Pull up the address on any mapping app that shows satellite view, and look at which way the front of the house and the major windows are pointing relative to true north. It takes 30 seconds. If the largest windows, especially in the living room, kitchen, or primary bedroom, are facing east or west without significant tree cover, deep overhangs, or some kind of shading structure, that's a serious red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean walk away from the house, but it absolutely means you should factor in higher cooling costs, and it gives you leverage to negotiate on price, because that home is going to cost more to live in than a similar home with better orientation. This is also becoming a bigger deal in the resale market than most people realize. As energy costs have climbed and more buyers educate themselves, homes with poor solar orientation are starting to sit on the market longer, and appraisers and energy auditors are increasingly factoring orientation and shading into home energy scores. Some states and some mortgage programs even factor projected energy costs into what they consider an affordable payment. So this isn't some fringe concern for eco-conscious buyers anymore. It's becoming a mainstream financial consideration, right up there with roof age and foundation condition. Now let's say you already own a home with bad orientation. Maybe you bought it years ago without knowing any of this, or maybe it was the best option in your budget and price range at the time. First, take a breath, because this is fixable, and none of these fixes require tearing down your house and starting over. The single most effective and most immediate fix is exterior shading on your east and west windows. Interior blinds and curtains help a little, but by the time sunlight has already passed through the glass, most of that heat energy is already trapped inside your home. Exterior solutions stop the heat before it ever gets in. This includes solar screens, which are mesh-like screens that mount on the outside of the window and block a large percentage of solar heat while still letting you see out. It includes exterior shutters, awnings, and even simple deciduous trees planted specifically on the east and west sides of your property. Deciduous trees are brilliant for this because they have leaves in the summer, providing shade exactly when you need it, and they drop their leaves in winter, letting sunlight back in when you actually want some warmth. Evergreen trees, on the other hand, work better on the north and west sides in colder climates, where you want a year-round windbreak against cold winter winds. If trees aren't practical because your home is newer or your lot is small, Exterior solar screens are one of the best dollar-for-dollar investments you can make. They're relatively inexpensive, they can be installed on existing windows without any major construction, and they can meaningfully cut down the solar heat gain hitting your worst-facing windows. For homeowners who want a more permanent architectural solution, awnings over west and east-facing windows, even simple metal or fabric ones, can block a significant amount of that low-angle afternoon and morning sun. Upgrading your window glass itself is another powerful option, especially if your windows are older. Modern energy-efficient windows are rated using two key numbers you should actually understand, because they'll show up on the label whenever you shop for replacement windows. The first is the solar heat gain coefficient, which tells you how much of the sun's heat actually passes through the glass into your home. A lower number means less heat gets in, which is exactly what you want on east and west-facing windows in hot climates. The second is the U factor, which measures how well the window prevents heat from escaping in cold weather. A lower U factor means better insulation. For south-facing windows in a cold climate, you actually want a slightly higher solar heat gain coefficient, because you want that free winter heat coming through. But for east and west-facing windows almost anywhere in the country, and for south-facing windows in hot climates, you want that number as low as reasonably possible. If a full window replacement isn't in your budget right now, there's a much cheaper interim solution: solar control window film. This is a thin film applied directly to your existing glass that can block a large portion of incoming solar heat while still letting visible light through, so your room doesn't turn dark and cave-like. It's a fraction of the cost of new windows, and for a homeowner dealing with one brutally hot west-facing room, it can make an immediate and noticeable difference in comfort within days of installation. There's also a landscaping and site strategy that a lot of people overlook completely: your outdoor living spaces. If your patio, deck, or favorite outdoor sitting area happens to be on the west side of your house, you're fighting an uphill battle every single afternoon. Consider whether a pergola, a shade sail, or even strategically placed potted trees could shift that space into comfortable territory during peak sun hours. I also want to address something important, because I don't want you walking away from this thinking every east or west-facing home is a disaster. That's simply not true, and it's important to be honest with you. Plenty of well-designed homes handle east and west exposure just fine, because the architect or builder actually accounted for it. Smaller windows on those exposures, generous overhangs, strategic tree placement, high-performance glass, these design choices can neutralize most of the downside. The real danger is when a home has large, unshaded, unprotected glass directly facing east or west, with no design considerations whatsoever, which unfortunately describes an enormous share of homes built quickly during the housing booms of the past few decades, when builders prioritized speed and lot efficiency over sun angles. So if you're currently house hunting, here's your practical checklist before you fall in love with a listing photo. Check the compass direction of the largest windows using a map app. Ask whether there are deciduous trees, overhangs, or other shading already in place on the east and west sides. Ask the seller or agent for recent utility bills, specifically looking at summer cooling costs and winter heating costs, and compare them to similar-sized homes in the area, because an unusually high bill relative to square footage is often a sign of poor orientation or poor insulation, sometimes both. And if the home does have poor orientation with no shading, don't panic. Just factor the cost of solar screens, film, or landscaping into your offer and use it as a genuine point of negotiation. If you're building a custom home, you have the biggest advantage of all, because you get to make this decision from day one instead of fixing someone else's mistake. Work with your architect or builder to orient the longer axis of the house east to west. Concentrate your glass on the south side with properly sized overhangs. Minimize glass on the east and west walls, and plan your landscaping with deciduous trees on the east and south sides for summer shade that disappears in winter. This single decision, made for free at the design stage, can save you an enormous amount of money over the entire time you own that home, and it costs absolutely nothing extra to simply rotate a floor plan on a lot before construction begins. I also want to touch on something that's becoming a real trend across the country right now: affordable and mobile home construction. because a lot of you have been asking about smart, low-cost ways to build. The same sun-facing principles apply here, just as much as they do to a traditional stick-built home, arguably even more, because smaller homes have a much smaller buffer of interior space to absorb temperature swings. A small home with a poorly placed west-facing window can heat up dramatically faster than a large home with the same mistake, simply because there's less air volume and less thermal mass to soak up that heat before it reaches you. If you're planning any kind of tiny home, manufactured home, or modular build, orientation should be one of the very first decisions you make, right alongside your floor plan, because it is genuinely one of the cheapest and most effective ways to keep long-term energy costs low in a smaller footprint home. Let's bring this all together, because I want you to walk away from this video actually being able to use this information, not just nod along and forget it by tomorrow. The direction your house faces determines how much free heat you get in the winter and how much unwanted heat you fight off in the summer. South-facing windows, when properly shaded with overhangs, are your best friend, offering warmth in winter and staying cool in summer. East and west-facing windows are your biggest energy liability almost everywhere in the country, because the sun hits them at low angles that no overhang can block. The long axis of an efficient home should run east to west, and your climate zone changes exactly how aggressive these strategies need to be. Hot southern states fighting summer heat gain across nearly all exposures, and colder northern states fighting winter heat loss on the north side. If you already own a home with poor orientation, you are not stuck. Exterior solar screens, strategic tree planting, upgraded low solar heat gain windows, solar control film, and well-placed awnings can transform an uncomfortable, expensive-to-cool home into a genuinely efficient one, often without a full renovation, and often for a lot less money than you'd expect. And if you're house hunting right now in 2026, do yourself a favor before you fall in love with a listing. Check which direction those big, beautiful windows are actually facing. That 30-second check with a map app could save you thousands of dollars and years of afternoon discomfort. It's the single most overlooked factor in American home buying, and now that you know it, you'll never be able to unsee it every single time you walk into a house for sale. If this helped you understand your own home a little better, or if it changes how you look at your next house hunt, that's exactly why I made this video. Take what you learned today, check your own windows, check the direction your future home faces, and make the sun work for you instead of against you.